I'm 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting Adam Finkelstein, and you are watching College Basketball Recruiting Weekly. On this week's show, we're going to break down some hot topics, including Dennis Evans coming back on the board in the class of 2023 after decommitting from Minnesota. Then, we've got the release of the updated 2024 national rankings, and we are going to break that all down. Then, we are going to look at 3 leading candidates to be the National Coach of the Year in college basketball. Last but not least, we will preview the upcoming rivalry game between Duke and Carolina, scheduled for this weekend. Now, it's that time of year where just about all the big names in the class of 2023 are off the board until they're back on the board. Now, Dennis Evans is the best recent example, decommitting from Minnesota and bringing one of the best rim protectors in the country back on the market. For much more on that, going to bring in Travis Branham and Eric Bossi to help me break this down. Ebos, you broke this news on 247sports.com. Tell us a little bit about what went into this decision.
I think there's a lot that went into it. Primarily, maybe some concern about the direction of the Minnesota program, and just a thing where after a year of taking some time to look at things, Dennis just wants to go back out and look around and see what else may be available to him.
Now, you have been a huge advocate for him, and it's been public. I'm not pulling back the curtain or anything. You've said this in the rankings process internally here. You really see a high upside here. Tell us about what you think he could be if everything goes right down the road.
No doubt. The thing with Dennis Evans is I get why he's a kind of big man that isn't necessarily everybody's cup of tea, because he is a little bit of a throwback big man. He's a true rim protector, probably needs to play in a pace that's a little bit more dedicated toward half-court offense. But he's a guy that I've been able to watch ever since his freshman year in high school, and he's developed each step of the way. Aside from the rim protection, he's been able to step out and start making jumpers. He's improved his ability to run the floor much better. And if you're around the kid, you realize that he's getting really, really strong up top. Now he's got to get stronger in his base, but we're talking about a kid that when he arrives on a college campus is still going to be 17 years old and has been on nothing but an upward trajectory. So I think for the right fit, he has a chance to really take off and be a great player, even if he's not fitting the mold of today's, desirable big man.
That's a great point about his age. Of course, mobility and durability going to be 2 important factors with him. Ebos, I'm going to ask you to speculate maybe a bit here, but who are some of the schools who you think may be interested now that he is back on the board?
It's still early, and we're going to have to see who jumps in on this, but I think there's 3 schools that stand out early. That's going to be TCU, who probably finishes the runner-up school the first time around with him. Louisville and Missouri. Those are 3 that come up early. Wouldn't be surprised if he's starting to set up visits soon. He's got the paperwork and the release done with Minnesota, and those are 3 that jump out to me early. TCU, Louisville, and Missouri to keep an eye on.
All right, well, Dennis Evans, a 7-footer and one of the best rim protectors in the national class of 2023, back on the board. Updated 2024 rankings are now live on the 247 Sports site. There is the same number 1, but he's got some new challengers. Dylan Harper making a real case to challenge Trey Johnson at the top. And then, of course, the big fella, he's continuing to own the pace. Those 3 really on top of that class, but that's just one of the many themes that we're going to explore here as I bring back in Travis Branham and Eric Bossi to help me break down this 2024 recruiting class. Now, fellas, there certainly was a big 3 here. And I know there were some differing opinions even among the group. Trav, I'm going to start with you because you were really championing the cause for someone who ended up at number 2.
Yeah, peeling back the curtain, holding no punches or what have you. Just saying Dylan Harper was my number 1 player in this 2024 class at this moment on the board. He is a kid who's having a tremendous junior season. And when you compare him to a guy like Trey Johnson or even Flory Badunga, Dylan Harper, to me, has the highest floor in the class with his ability to impact the game, both as a scorer and as a playmaker. He has a tremendous feel and IQ for the game and has an incredible amount of finesse around the rim, extremely soft touch, finishes in traffic and over length. Also comes from bloodlines, so that's definitely another box that we look to have checked. Trey Johnson, he's a tremendous talent, tremendous scorer with a ton of potential, but based on what I got to see this high school season, Dylan Harper was my number one.
It's a darn good argument, honestly. I mean, I got nothing. I think I would agree with you that I think he's got the highest floor. Bossi, you have made the case, not quite as passionately as Trav, but you have made an argument for the best big man in the class to at least get consideration for that top spot. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, frankly, I think I'm kind of like Switzerland in this number one debate. I can see the arguments for Trey Johnson. I can see them for Dylan Harper. And I could maybe see Flory Badunga, our number 3 guy, as being the sleeper candidate. Now, I get it. There's maybe a little bit of a limitation from a skill standpoint with him. But when it comes to running the floor, dunking, rebounding, blocking shots, and just handing out some good old-fashioned intimidation around the rim, there's no one better than the big man out of Indiana. I think he's just scratching the surface of what he can be. I think when he gets around higher-level talent and guys who can help space the floor, we're going to see that he does some other things. He passes really well out of double teams. He's got to be maybe the best screener in high school basketball, period, I've seen, which sounds underrated, but it's really not. Those hard screens he sets get not only his teammates, but him open to do more things. And I think as time goes on, we're going to see that he's got a little bit more game, both with his back to the basket and facing the hoop from 8 to 12 feet than he's been given credit for.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. And his size, you know, as you project him up a couple of levels, I think he's got to stretch the floor a little bit. All right, now maintaining that top spot, Trey Johnson. As I said, I don't disagree with Trav's assessment that Harper has probably the highest floor in the class. I think Johnson has the highest ceiling, though. His combination of perimeter size, that shot-making ability, he can create space with his handle, and he still has so much untapped physicality. When you look at his frame, he's a long way from a finished product. So when you project him out a couple of years, I think at the end of the day, he's the one who has the best chance to be the best player down the road. Again, if I had to win a game right now, I might go with Harper. If I needed to win it in the paint, I might go with Flory. But down the road, I think Trey Johnson, because of the size, because of the skill set, because of the handle, the shot-making ability, and the untapped physical upside, I think is the one who has the highest ceiling in the class. Now, fellas, this is a group that collectively, in the class of 2024, I don't know if you two would agree with this, but I feel like there's a lot of changes on the horizon. We've got a lot of the same candidates populating the top 10, and we're seeing some other ones start to emerge. I think this class could look very different in about 6 months. So I want to give a little preview of prospects who have made a jump since our last rankings and could continue to move up in the coming months. So Trav, I'm going to start with you in terms of one player who's really risen in your eyes.
The biggest riser in my eyes is Drake Powell in North Carolina commit, early junior commit for the Tar Heels. 6'5", 6'6" wing with a tremendous amount of athleticism. He plays with an extremely high motor. This is a kid who has made a tremendous amount of development over the last 12 months. This time last year, he was a very streaky, at best, shooter from 3. He was a straight line driver to the rim, but his calling card from that point was his defense and the motor that he brought to the floor. Now, fast forward up until today, and his ball skills have improved a tremendous amount. He's breaking guys down off the dribble, getting where he needs to out on the floor. Also a very good passer, a mature decision maker. He's ambidextrous with the ball in his hands, who will willingly get his teammates involved. And also that jump shot. He's continuing to improve there. He's able to make shots off the catch and pull out to 3. Now that's an area that he is going to have to continue to improve on. But from mid-range, he can make shots. And again, he's getting more comfortable and reliable from beyond the perimeter.
All right. Again, quite a case is made. Bossi, who you have for a notable riser in the class of 2024?
I'm going to go ahead and stick in the state of Indiana, where Cannon Catchings is a guy that we have coming from outside of the top 100 to inside of the top 20. And frankly, I don't think his climb is done. He's a 6'8", pushing 6'9" kind of combo face-up 4-man who is committed to Purdue. If anything, we've seen recently when Matt Painter goes all in early on a guy, we better take notice, because their player development and evaluation identification has been on fire of late. But more than anything, it's this guy's game. He can face up and shoot from distance. He can put the ball on the floor. He's turning into a live wire athlete. Had a chance to see him play in person during the winter. And out of anyone in any class, he's maybe one of the guys who I walked away just kind of with that jaw drop of like, holy cow, look how much this guy has improved over the last year. He's also got a lot of things going for his favor when it comes to bloodlines. He's got an aunt who's an all-time great WNBA player, Tamika Catchings. His mother played Division I basketball at a high level at Illinois. He's got a grandfather who played in the NBA. There's a lot to like about this kid, and he's, I think, where the future of the game is going. And I think when he gets out this spring and this summer, people are going to be like, holy cow, where did he come from? And hopefully we're going to look pretty good being ahead of the curve with him.
All right, well, another player that I would add to this discussion is Tyler Betsy from St. Thomas More School in Connecticut. Now, before I elaborate on him, first I've got to give Travis flowers. Again, we are pulling back the curtain here, and this is a player that coming out of the summer, Trav thought internally should be ranked higher than he ended up being. Since that point, he has not only proved you right, but I think he's really expanded his game. The player we saw in the summer had a really intriguing physical profile because he was fluid and athletic in the open floor, and he was also making shots at a really high clip from behind the three-point line. What we've seen during the recent prep school season is someone who's starting to explore with his half-court playmaking a little bit. He's putting the ball on the floor, he's attacking closeouts, he's getting into the lane, and he's just starting to make plays off the dribble. So really diversifying his offensive attack, and most importantly, just showing a rate of improvement that is continuing to escalate. So it really speaks to how high his upside could be down the road. Those are three of the prospects who have made jumps in the recent 2024 rankings, but they are certainly not the only ones. For much more on the updated rankings, including the full 150 and plenty of analysis, please visit 247sports.com. Now we're going to turn our attention to the sideline and talk about some of the coaches that have done the very best job in the 2022-23 season. In fact, we're going to discuss our early favorites, because there's still a lot of season left to be played, for the National Coach of the Year. We've got 3 candidates, and we've got 3 of us. So again, Travis Branham, Eric Bossi, going to help me break it all down. E-Boss, I will start with you. Who is your pick for Coach of the Year at this point?
I'm going with Mick Cronin, and it wasn't an easy decision because there's so many, super candidates out there, even maybe a Jeff Capel or a Chris Collins or whoever you may want to throw at it. But Cronin, I like what he's doing. I think he has UCLA in position, the best position to possibly bring a national championship back to the West Coast. That hasn't happened since Arizona back in 1997. Wow. He's got some things going for him that have certainly helped him. They were a top 5 team preseason, and they've lived up to that billing. He's got a senior leader and warrior in Jaime Jaquez. Tiger Campbell feels like he's been running the point there pretty much since, the God said let there be a light, and the flip got switched. But he's done a lot of things. He's taken a kid like Jalen Clark and really developed him. He's taken a kid like Amari Bailey, who's had to dust off some injury issues, and someone who I think many people had questions of whether he'd be able to handle playing for Mick Cronin, and really turned him into a very valuable player. Their other freshman, Adem Bonus, coming along. And they've done it without the deepest of benches, but he seems to be pushing all the right buttons all season long. They, for the most part, have won the games they're supposed to win. And here they are sitting atop the Pac-12 with things closed out very, very early for the regular season championship. I think they're deserving of that number 1 seed out of the West, and just really like everything he's done, and think this is the year that maybe he needs to get a little bit more national notoriety for the job that he's done out in Westwood.
Can't argue with any of that, but Trav, you have another candidate that you're going to mention here. Who you got?
Yeah, while Mick Cronin is obviously a great answer, and there are a slew of great options for this award this year. I mean, I don't think anybody in the country has done what Jerome Tang has done down at Kansas State. A first-time ever head coach in college basketball, taking over a job in a depleted Kansas State program at this point. And then we're not talking about one of the best jobs in the Big 12 either. We're talking about Kansas State coming in, revamping this roster in the transfer portal, and coming out currently, as of today, ranked number 17 overall in the net with 9 quad 1 wins, a handful of big victories in the Big 12 coming over top 10, top 15 caliber teams, and also currently ranking 3rd overall in easily the best conference in the entire country. So when you take into consideration the fact that he flipped a roster in the portal, took over a job in his first ever year as a college basketball head coach, and has taken on the best conference in all of college basketball. It is a very, very difficult thing. We see it all the time, trying to get a new team and piece it all together and really gel all these guys and he's done it, and he's done it astoundingly. So to me, it's a no-brainer decision. You got to go with Jerome Tang.
Well, he has certainly exceeded all expectations. The coach I'm going to go with hoisted the national championship trophy last April, and he's in a position to do it again, despite the fact that he turned over quite a bit of his roster, sent 2 guys off to be first-round draft picks in the NBA, and that, of course, is Bill Self. And for context, because I think that's important, Bill Self missed the opening of the season, the school self-imposed penalty. Norm Roberts took over, coached the first few games of the season. Although Self wasn't on the sidelines, I think that speaks to the culture he created. Culture is a buzzword that every college coach uses, and not nearly as many actually have. But there is a standard of excellence there at Kansas, and if you don't reach that standard, you are out of there. And they have rebuilt their roster on the fly, same point Travis was just making. But through the transfer portal, they did a really good job in the high school recruiting ranks as well. Grady Dick has made an immediate impact. And they are, again, right there as I think one of the favorites to win this year's national championship. And I'll close with this. In a year in which we saw both Coach K and Jay Wright retire from college coaching, I think everybody said, who is the big name? Is it John Calipari? Who else is it? To me, Bill Self is the guy right now in college basketball. Year in and year out, he's the one who you know is going to have a championship caliber team, not just in terms of conference championships, but who can contend for national championships. Now, sometimes the best guy year in and year out doesn't win the award, but they still deserve their recognition. For far more on these 3 candidates, you can check out their resumes right here. We've got, as Bossi mentioned, so many potential worthy candidates here. Jeff Capel, another one who certainly deserves some credit, but Jerome Tang, Mick Cronin, and Bill Self among the very best to do it this season. The biggest rivalry in college basketball returns this week as Duke heads to North Carolina. Now, this is always a heated matchup whenever these 2 teams get together, but there's a little something extra on the table this week. In fact, North Carolina, who began the season as the #1 ranked team in the country, this is almost a must-win game for them just to get to the NCAA tournament. Of course, for Duke, first-year head coach Jon Scheyer, they have still yet to prove they can win a big game on the road, and there are no more big games if you're Duke than at North Carolina. So plenty at stake here. Back in, Travis Branham, Eric Bossi helped to break this down. Trav, I will start with you. This matchup, you were there when these 2 teams played earlier in the season. What is the key point to watch for this coming weekend?
To me, the key aspects of this game is going to be coming out of the backcourt. You got Caleb Love and R.J. Davis for the North Carolina Tar Heels, 2 guys that haven't been necessarily in sync, especially the second half of this season. When you go back to that first matchup, neither of the guards were up to their playing their best basketball. R.J. Davis did do a great job of taking care of the basketball. If I remember correctly, he had 5 assists, 0 turnovers. But Caleb Love really kind of upset the rhythm of their offensive flow on the with his just frankly hero ball coming down, taking high difficulty jump shots well beyond the 3-point line. That really takes the air out of the sails, if you will, on the offensive end. And also for the Duke Blue Devils, Tyrese Proctor is playing the best basketball of the season right now. He's really come into his own over the past, over the past 2 months, and Jeremy Roach is continuing to play good basketball. So to me, this is going to be a game that's won in the backcourt. We can talk Armando Bacot, but if Caleb Love is out there taking these high difficult shots and they aren't falling, it's going to be an uphill battle for North Carolina.
That was a very diplomatic way of saying, pass the darn ball. I respect that. Ibas, are there any players who maybe aren't as some sleepers, shall we say, who could have a big impact on this game?
Yeah, there's a guy who stands out on each side for me. And of course, Mark Mitchell isn't going to be a surprise for Duke fans, and Leaky Black is not a surprise for the people with the intense North Carolina focus. But for the general fan, I think there's 2 guys who can really be difference makers in this game. Mitchell is another one of those highly touted 5-star freshmen who came in for Duke. And I think as they've tried to adjust to figuring out how to play him, Kyle Filipowski, and Derek Lively all together on a gigantic front line, they've realized just how useful and how much of a Swiss Army knife Mitchell can be for them, whether they want to put him in the high post and have him help initiate a little bit of offense. He's becoming a real standout on the defensive end where he can move all around. He's getting on the glass, and of late, he's been providing them with a little bit more scoring. And he's able to do so without being a guy who's a ball stopper, can just do it naturally in the flow, whether it be picking up dump offs in transition or getting out for lobs or getting things. He's just a highly useful player who's really starting to hit his stride. Now on the other side, we've got Leaky Black, been around, lots of games under his belt. Certainly not his first rodeo here when it comes to a big game, an important game. Frankly, a very much must-win game, like as must-win as they get. So he's another guy who I love his defensive versatility. They can use him all over the floor. I think in a game like this where Duke is going to have so much size out there, all the length and quickness and guys who can cover ground and get deflections and things of that nature that Leaky really stands out with, really play big here. And also I think every now and then he'll have kind of a surprise offensive game and make a couple threes and get out and do some things. If he can do that for Carolina this weekend, they've got a real good shot of winning this one at home.
Pete Nance, another guy who came up big against Virginia. Curious to see if he can do it again. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Kyle Filipowski. I think it's going to be an interesting subplot to see if Duke's bigs, particularly their young bigs, can stay out of foul trouble going up against Baycott. Fellas, thank you again for joining us. We'll see you again next week. All right, the big game Saturday, 6:30, Duke at Carolina. Must win for Carolina, and retribution on the mind for Hubert Davis and his guys after Duke defended their home court in round one earlier in the month of February. Well, that's it for this week. And until next week, be sure to visit 247sports.com. Remember, it's the only place on the internet you can get everything you want to know about recruiting, college basketball, and the NBA draft. Check it out. We'll see you next week.